So, what exactly do you mean when you say, what do you mean?
I do not understand this. This really confuses me.
What's that supposed to mean?
Literally.
What's that supposed to mean?
What's that supposed to mean?
I don't know what you're talking about.
What are you talking about?
What's that supposed to mean?
Cultural anthropologist Ujwal Arkalgud and Motive-Based president Jason Partridge will tell you that perception and meaning are the primary pressure points that shape and create the world we live in.
Inconceivable! You keep using that word.
Let's explore why meaning matters.
I don't think it means what you think it means.
Now, here's your host, Aaron Trafford.
Welcome back into Why Meaning Matters, officially season 2. And this is the show, in case you aren't sure, this is the show where we're aiming to answer the question in the title, why meaning matters. And just to recap, in case you're just joining us now, last season, we took a really broad view of the topic of meaning. We dug into how meaning is formed, why that's important for companies and organizations to really understand and leverage today. And in season 1, we talked about these large issues, political movements, gender, identity, self-care, age, like really big, meaty topics. But for this season, what I think we want to accomplish is to put all of this into real world context. So Ujwal and Jason joining me again, and you guys have had some good response to what we got going in season 1. But I think the consensus is among our listeners and the three of us is that we're ready to go deeper. Yes?
Yeah, absolutely. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback. I think, to quote one of the emails I received, I think I got what you meant by meaning. Can we dig in further? So that's sort of the essence, the energy that we want to bring into season 2.
Well, I think the comment that I got was, you said you could do this with anything, so challenge accepted. So
right. Okay. So let's accept the challenge this season. And what I want, let's just pick some really big, I want to start with retail, because I don't think there's a human being, at least on Earth in North America, or where, the people we're talking to, who aren't impacted by retail messaging. So let's talk about how meaning in those places are changing. But the place I want to go is to home, how home is changing. And selfishly, I want to start here because this is how I started my digital career, is working with businesses in the home decor space. And I've seen a huge shift in the last 3 years. So let's talk about this. What does home mean now that it didn't mean before?
Yeah, sounds good. And, I think the cool thing that we can pull out as we go along is also draw a distinction between what the study of meaning gets us versus, what sort of the study of mentions gets us on the opposite side of the coin. And I'll start with one example, because what we're going to discuss is basically 3 major themes of meaning that are shaping how the consumer currently and in the future, in the near future, will think about their interior space. And I'll start with the first one, which I think is the most fascinating one to me: accessible living. When we first saw meanings around accessibility associated with how people design their homes, and I don't mean, building a new home from scratch. I mean designing the space with decor, with small shifts and changes. People always make small renovations, improvements in their home, and especially through the pandemic, a lot of that has happened. But accessibility has been an important development in this space. And the first question I asked was, is this just, obviously people who have somebody in their home, maybe in their family, that has an accessibility requirement, a need, right? Maybe there's somebody with a disability that needs something that's accessible. But turns out that's not what this is. This is about people bringing their value systems to the forefront and showing it off in their homes. If my home is accessible, in the future, one day, for example, if I have somebody who comes to my home who is in a wheelchair, they will realize that my home is just as welcoming to them as it is to anybody else who can walk on their 2 feet with privilege. I think that's huge.
And you're bringing something into I'm remembering when we first moved into the house we're in, we have a couple steps up to our front door. And it was our first Halloween in a house. And it was the first time we were ever going to have trick-or-treaters. And the first thing I said to my husband is, we need to move the cars over to the side of the driveway. And I need to sit at the end of the porch so the kids can come to the door in case one of them is in a wheelchair. And guess what happened? We had 2 children in wheelchairs that Halloween. And the parents were just overjoyed that we had thought to create space for them. And so I'm assuming that's what you're getting at. This is more of an emotional thing with your home, a values-based choice we're making with how we design our houses.
I think the key to what you said there, Aaron, was that you guys, kind of thought about somebody else's experience and chose to do something that showed that you understood or were empathetic with the needs that they had. And I think that that's the big underlying kind of trend that we're seeing in this particular instance, which is that, again, the point of this is not to say that everybody is going to level their stairs and have a ramp that gets installed to the front door. The idea is, what are the small little things that illustrate that I understand another person's perspective, and that I'm taking that into account so that when they potentially come into the home, I make them feel more comfortable, and that my home becomes no longer a house to these people. It clearly is a home.
And can I get to the cynical side of this for a second as well? Because the other part of this is that as human beings, we all need, and we talked about this in season 1, we all need this thing we call symbolic capital, right? This currency, symbolic currency that we develop in order to gain power, prestige, status in our communities. How much status do I gain when a friend of mine comes home and he goes, "Oh, you designed that for accessibility?" I'm like, "Yeah." "Oh, do you have somebody who?" No. This is part of my value system. Like, think about how bad I'm going to make my friend feel for what his house is like, right? That's the power in this. And that's the cynical side of this. Perhaps cynical, perhaps just human, but it's a huge part of why we do these things.
This is going to lead into, I think, some of the other territories, but also take into consideration that, 20 years ago, your house to the outside world was the exterior of the house. With the, influx of the ability for us to use social media with things like Instagram and Facebook, the fact that everybody's camera has a camera on it that allows us to capture everything and anything at any particular moment, the interior of the house is now exterior facing. And so now, as a result, the choices that we make with home decor and the choices that we make in regards to how we set things up are no longer done just in the kind of the isolated notion of, this is my space that I am going to share with the world. And, so as we start to think about these different choices about what they say, and those choices showing the values of the type of person we are, those are clearly things that are going to be shared, across the spectrum and garner feedback.
Plus, the government is probably watching you through your
of course.
little webcam, right? Might as well show them.
Most of us are showing now our home office spaces, right?
I'm showing them the desk I'm writing off. So.
But I mean, I think through the pandemic more than anything, the home office, talk about social capital. I mean, I felt pretty fancy because we, for whatever reason, the year before the pandemic hit, decided to renovate our house and not do the kitchen. We did an office extension. And I was like, I'm winning. I have this huge office in the middle of a pandemic and other people working on the side of their dining room table. So, I mean, I think that's just a clear example of the changing values around what is inside the home at a very brass tacks level.
Absolutely. And I think it takes us into sort of the next territory as well, which is this whole idea of calming retreat. Mm-hmm. We at least pre-pandemic, we did not pay as much attention to how our homes made us feel because we had the luxury of being outside all the time for work, for play, for school, whatever. And suddenly we have had to take stock of how our home environment makes us feel. And of course, there are people who've always thought this way, but when you think about the way the mainstream thinks about what their home's like, this notion of a calming retreat is seeping into the mainstream. And the interesting thing, it's not just about feeling like that in my home because I'm in it. It's also feeling like that because I'm also looking at myself in the damn Zoom camera, and I'm seeing my own space and my own background, and that also kind of makes me feel good about what I've achieved. So all of that plays an interesting role there, and it's created this new set of requirements around this.
And I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of COVID all over again, but the reality is that I think back to, I always remember seeing Penn from Penn and Teller talk about how a bedroom is a sanctuary and it needs to be entirely for sleep, because at the end of the day, you need to clear the mind to allow the mind to reach a calming state. And if you have distraction in there, then it takes away from how you feel when you wake up in the morning. And I always thought that's amazing. And then I would take a step back and look at my tiny semi-detached house in Cabbage Town, and I would say, yeah, but that just doesn't work in real life, and COVID exemplified this and really kind of amped that up, because we were crawling over top of each other. I mean, Aaron, I was that guy at the dining room table, and it worked before COVID, because at the end of the day, the family had other venues and other places to go. But when we were all forced to be in that one space, we started to reevaluate things. And so now, even though things are starting to open up, we now have a place where I have that office. And to your point, that office is so valuable, because what it means is it's not just my freedom in order to have my privacy in this moment, but it's also this reprieve to know that my family can have this calming experience that isn't being interrupted by my responsibility. So, there's this new change that we're starting to see in regards to how we think about the function of the home, and how we value how different rooms and different kind of experiences can lead us to, a different state.
Tell me though, where's the opportunity here for companies and marketers in the space? What should they be talking about now or creating now to leverage this shift that we've all felt?
Yeah, great question. I'll give you one example. Just building on what Jason was saying, a lot of people want to do more with what they have, right? Because we're not always in a privileged position to say, oh, I'm going to upgrade my home. That's a very small population. So most of us want to do more. How do we do more without spending thousands of dollars? We do it through home decor. So home decor is a huge opportunity here. And I'll give you examples. If you just go to Pinterest for a second and you look at interior, exterior, people are doing these small, quick renovations. People are doing these small, quick changes where they make their space feel larger. They make their space feel calmer. How do they do that? Through decor items, changing the color on the walls, figuring out what kind of art you need to have, figuring out how to position, certain furniture. Suddenly you're learning about feng shui and all of this other stuff. But if you're a retailer selling these kinds of products, this is a huge opportunity, not just in terms of educating the audience on how they can achieve all of this, how they can hack their own internal space to solve the accessibility problem, solve the calming problem, solve the work problem, but also to give them, in many ways, I think what the audience needs is the Lego pieces, because the audience can't figure all this out on their own, right? So if you have a retailer saying, hey, I'm going to give you all the Lego blocks and I'm going to give you the instructions, just go put that together in your space. Huge opportunity.
Whoever cracks multifunctional creativity in the home will win, because that cat is out of the bag now.
Oh, okay. We opened up the bag, guys. I want to keep going. We talked about a couple things here that I think will lend to the next conversation I want to have. Decluttering our space, clearing our space. A lot of folks were donating half their clothing during the pandemic. It created this whole new culture around fashion and what we're wearing. So let's put a pin in this episode and jump back in, continue to talk about home and fashion and the meanings around that in the next episode. Sound good?
Rock and roll.
All right. You're listening to
Perfect.
Why Meaning Matters. You can find us online. We're on all of the major podcasts platforms, Spotify, Apple. Make sure that you subscribe and follow and share with your colleagues. And if you have something, a comment or a question for us, you can find us at hello@storystudionetwork.com. We'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks for listening to Why Meaning Matters with Ujwal Arkulgud, Jason Partridge, and your host, Aaron Trafford.
Inconceivable! You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Why Meaning Matters is produced for Motive Base and the Story Studio Network by Eye Contact Productions.